IPC Sunday School, Class 6, Lesson 11, JEPHTAH. Dear students, please go through the reading portion mentioned on the slide before proceeding further. As in the last class, we learned about the fifth judge of Israel, that was Gideon, who saved Israelites from the hand of the Midianites. So this time we are going to learn about the ninth judge of Israel, and that is JEPHTAH. Now let's learn about the background of JEPHTAH. His father's name was Gilead, but his mother was a prostitute. Gilead's wife also bore him sons, and when they grew up, they drove JEPHTAH out and said, "You shall not have an inheritance in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman." After being expelled from his home by his own brothers, he went to live in the land of Tob, which means better. And there, some worthless men got along and went out raiding with him. After some time, people of Ammon made war against Israel. Gileadites then went to get JEPHTAH for help from the land of Tob. They said to JEPHTAH, "Come and be our commander, that we may fight against Ammon." JEPHTAH then asked them, "Did you not hate me and expel me from my father's house? Why have you come to me when you are in distress?" The elders of Gilead responded to JEPHTAH by saying, "This is why we have turned again to you now, that you may go with us and fight against the people of Ammon and be the head over all the inhabitants of Gilead." So JEPHTAH said to the elders of Gilead, "If you take me back home to fight against the people of Ammon, and the Lord delivers them to me, shall I be your head?" The elders of Gilead said to JEPHTAH, "The Lord will be a witness between us, if we do not do according to your words." Then JEPHTAH went with the elders of Gilead and became their head and commanded over them. JEPHTAH spoke all his words before the Lord at Mizpah in Gilead. So JEPHTAH sent out messengers to the king of Ammon so as to understand the reason for this war and to resolve their differences peacefully. But the king of Ammon responded that the war was intended to get back the land that Israel took from them after they came out of Egypt. Then JEPHTAH sent messengers again and gave his reasoning as to why they had to take this land from Ammonites. He said, Israel did not intend to take away the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites. But when Israelites came from Egypt, they sent messengers to the king of Edom and to the king of Moab, asking to let Israel pass through their lands. But both the kings would not give their consent. And so Israel had to go through the wilderness in order to bypass these lands and somehow manage to reach the land of Moab. They did not enter Moab as they had to cross its border, Arnon. So now Israel sent messengers to Sihon, the king of Amorites, and requested him to let them pass through their lands. But Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his territory, and gathered all people together and fought against Israel. But God helped Israel to defeat Sihon and his army, and that's how Israel gained possession of all the land of the Amorites. JEPHTAH further confirmed his reasoning by saying, "Let Jehovah be the judge this day between the children of Israel and the people of Ammon." However, the king of Ammon did not heed the words which JEPHTAH sent him. Upon seeing that the king of Ammonite were determined to make a war against Israel, JEPHTAH makes a vow to the Lord and says, "If God gives them victory over Ammonites, then whatever comes out of his house to meet him will be offered as a burnt offering to the Lord." So JEPHTAH crossed over to the Ammonites to fight against them, and the Lord gave them into his hand. So the Ammonites were subdued before the people of Israel. After the victory, when JEPHTAH came to his house at Mizpah, he saw his daughter coming out to greet him with timbrels and dancing. And there he remembers a vow that he made to the Lord and mourns over his daughter, as she was his only child. Besides her, there were no other sons and daughters Jephthah had. Upon hearing the vow made by Jephthah, his daughter requests him to keep the promise he made to the Lord, but only asks him for a period of 2 months to wander the mountains and bewail her virginity with her friends. Upon her return, Jephthah carries out the vow he made to the Lord. And it became a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went 4 days each year to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. The Ephraimites were angry about not being called to participate in the war with the Ammonites. And they went to Jephthah and asked him, "Why did you cross over to fight against the Ammonites and not call us to go with you?" And also threatened to burn his property. But Jephthah reasoned and told them that I had called you to fight the battle against the Ammonites, but you have not responded. And when he saw that the Ephraimites were not coming to deliver him, he made his promise to the Lord to gain a victory over the Ammonites. And so Jephthah gathered his men, the Gileadites, and fought with Ephraim and struck them. The Gileadites then captured the fords of Jordan against the Ephraimites to catch the fleeing Ephraimites who were trying to get back to their territory. They then asked each person who wanted to cross the river to say the word Shibboleth. But Ephraimites pronounced it wrongly as Sibboleth, and they were killed there. And that day 42,000 Ephraimites were killed. Now students, let's learn some lessons from the life of Jephthah. The first one being to be a keeper of your word. Now we all know that Jephthah made a vow to the Lord. He said, if God delivers the people of Ammonites into his hands, then whatever comes out of the doors of his house to meet him, he will offer it up as a sacrifice for the Lord. But to Jephthah's shock, when he arrived home, his daughter was the first one who came out of the house. Obviously, Jephthah was not expecting this. The decision to keep the vow has been very hard for Jephthah since his daughter was his only child. This means that his lineage would not continue anymore. His generation would not continue. This is a very tragic situation for any person. As Christians, there is a vital lesson that we learn from this story. God holds us accountable for the words we say. So students, we should not make any promises, or we should not make use of any words that we cannot keep. Christians are expected to be keepers of their word. Never make a promise that you are not able to keep. If you cannot keep it, then don't make any promises at all. So whatever decision or whatever promise you make in the presence of the Lord, make sure to keep them. The next lesson we can learn from Jephthah's life is that the very people who rejected him and drove him out of his father's house came to him when they were in trouble and asked them to fight for them and to be their commander. So we all know that Jephthah was driven by his half-brothers from his father's house because he was born to another woman. And these same brothers, years later, when Ammonites waged a war against Israel, they came to him and asked Jephthah to be their leader. Dear students, you don't need to have a worthy background in order to be used by God for his purpose. There are many examples in the Bible that God used who did not come from a worthy background to lead his people Israel. You may be considered as a loser in the eyes of the world, in the eyes of your friends, or in the eyes of anyone who knows you. But what matters is what God sees in you. And all God needs is your availability for him. And lastly, Jephthah judged Israel for 6 years, and he died and was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. May God bless you all.